David Ward, and the Warrington Borough Council, date the 30th of May 2013. This will be interesting.
You sad people.
Okay, case overview. What the government would like people to believe is that a procedural impropriety is an acceptable mistake which can be overlooked. But what this is a deliberate act of fraud and also malfeasance in a public office. These are very serious crimes with criminal intent. Fraud is a deliberate action to defraud where the victim of the crime is unaware, having no knowledge of a situation or fact. This crime carries a penalty of 7 to 10 years incarceration, and thereafter, where there is multiple instances of 63.5 million people are subject to this crime every day, as it is now commonplace and is carried out by the largest and most ruthless criminal company in this country. This same company is also a public office with the enforcement to execute this crime, which is inclusive but not limited to the Office of the Police, the Office of the Judiciary, local government and central government, independent bailiff companies which are licensed by the same company. Malfeasance, misfeasance and nonfeasance is also a very severe crime with a period of incarceration of life imprisonment. Malfeasance is a deliberate act with criminal intent to defraud. Ignorance is no defence. Malfeasance has been defined by appellate courts in other jurisdictions as a wrongful act which the actor has no legal right to do, as an act for which there is no authority or warrant of law, as an act which a person ought not to do, as an act which is wholly wrongful and unlawful, as that which an officer has no authority to do and is positively wrong or unlawful, and as the unjust performance of some act which the party performing it has no legal right. That's a really good definition. Oops.
That's their definition.
So basically every vaccine at the moment.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Every premier.
Every vaccine, every time they're told to wear a mask, every time they do a lockdown, it's all criminal, it's all malfeasance, it's all outright terrorism.
Yeah.
And another good one there is non-feasance. That's something that someone ought to do by law, which is protect us. So they're also guilty of non-feasance.
Well, I haven't heard that one before.
Well, there's malfeasance, there's non-feasance, and there's misfeasance. Malfeasance is where there's a deliberate act that they knowingly do. Misfeasance is something that they've done by accidents, but haven't realised what they've done. And non-feasance is where they know they should have done something, but deliberately not done something. So in the event that, and it is correct that ignorance is no defence, everything is malfeasance.
Yeah.
And that carries a term of incarceration of 25 years, which is life.
Crimes of this nature cannot go unpunished. If crime goes unpunished, then the criminal will undertake the action again and again. When the criminal is rewarded for the crime by their peers and superiors, it then becomes difficult to know that a crime has been committed in the first place. However, it is everyone's obligation to be fully conversant with their actions and the consequences of their actions in every situation. I was just following orders or I was just doing my job is no excuse. When the full extent of these crimes is realised, it then becomes blatantly obvious that these crimes are deliberate and in full knowledge, if not by the lower subordinates, but definitely by the executive officers of the company. The cost of these crimes has been estimated to be in the region of £4,037.25 trillion over the past 35 years. This is the cost to the people of this country, which is far in excess by many times the global GDP. The simplicity of this case is very often overlooked as it involves a simple PCN, a penalty charge notice. It is important here to note that the appellant, it is important to note here that the appellant at a tribunal did not challenge the PCN or the Traffic Management Act, but the appellant took out the very foundation to any claim made under Act or Statute of Parliament. all of which have had the same legal dependency, which has never been fulfilled in 800 years. There are in excess of 80 million acts and statutes, none of which can be acted upon without the legal authority to do so. To act upon these same acts and statutes without the illegal authority to do so is malfeasance in a public office and fraud at the very least. This case, which was undertaken at tribunal and therefore recognised due process, confirms this to be the facts of the matter. This may be a simple PCN, but close observation of the details will conclusively show otherwise. This is the PCN issued by the Warrington Borough Council, which clearly shows that a claim being made under the Traffic Management Act 2004, there is clearly no disclosure to the fact that there is no liability to pay, as the outcome will show. The next document and physical evidence is the notice to the owner from the same Warrington Borough Council, which also quite clearly makes the claim that there has been a violation of the Traffic Management Act 2004, Section 82 on the 8th of April 2013. Just make that a bit bigger. So they're the two. That's the penalty charge there and the instructions for payment with the little payment slip at the bottom.
See that little squiggle there in the left-hand side panel? Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That's the traffic warden's signature.
Is it?
As soon as I saw that he'd done, yeah. This is, I'm going to fill you on the background on the day, yeah? I'd stopped in town, didn't know I'd stopped in a disabled parking spot because there was only one to drop off an invoice at a shop. I'd done some computer repairs and dove out the shop as soon as I saw the traffic warden sticking a ticket on the car, yeah? Or he was going to stick a ticket on the car. At which point I was giving him a lot of abuse and grief because, you know, I know my stuff. And I actually stopped and shut up as soon as I noticed that he'd squiggled it. Because as soon as he's put a pen to it and signed it, that's a legal document. And it's obvious at the top. You can't see it, you can't quite read it there. But it's from Warrington Borough Council. It says at the top, it's a penalty charge notice. And in the dark text, what you can't see, it's under the Road Traffic Act 2006, Section 42. Not Section 42. Road Traffic Act 2004, Section 82. And it's the fact that he signed it. And it's got his civil enforcement number on it. Civil Enforcement Officer 184.
This document here you're talking about?
No, I was talking about the one above the actual traffic ticket itself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. How can I make that full screen?
Yeah, well, I recently got one of those, but it never had a signature on it.
Well, that makes it, the fact that he picked up a pen and signed it, that makes it into a legal document. When they haven't signed it, when they haven't put their squiggle on it, that makes it into a document that's not been signed, which violates the Companies Act 2006, Section 42, because they haven't signed it. And because they haven't signed it, then it's fraud by abuse of position. Fraud Act 2006, Section 4, Part 2. Because they've not done something.
Yeah, right. Okay, so then there we've got this one here. That looks like the actual infringement notice there. £70, payment due now. And then the opportunity to make representation as to why there is no liability. That's obviously another part of the notification that came with it for you.
Yeah, this comes from the Borough Council.
Yeah.
And you've got to read them tick boxes very carefully as to what you should do, because it tells you there in them tick boxes, you know, that there has been an impropriety. In other words, we have committed fraud. Yeah. So that's the one you tick.
Yeah. I'm not liable to pay the penalty because the alleged contravention did not occur. The penalty there has been a procedural impropriety by the enforcement authority. The order which is alleged to have been contravened in relation to the vehicle concerned is invalid. We don't have that here in Australia, that kind of thing with ours.
They just hit you with a notice to pay and you've got to pay, and there's none of this. Yeah.
No, you don't get that. There's no signature on the ones in the city anyway. Okay, so we would also point out at this point that this is an unsigned notice and not a legal document. The mitigating circumstances are that there has been a procedural impropriety, which is clearly an option, as this is clearly stated on the notice to the owner. So it is apparent that there is a procedural impropriety in place, and this is known by the Warrington Borough Council. Otherwise, this option would not be part of the notice to the owner. We also took the opportunity to utilise a second option, which confirms there is a procedural impropriety and that the order which is alleged to have been contravened in relation to the vehicle is invalid. Why else would these possibilities be on this notice to owner if there was not a procedural impropriety? We also took the opportunity to complete section 3 of the notice to owner to clarify the procedural impropriety on a separate piece of paper as advocated by the Warrington Borough Council, as there was not enough space on the notice to owner provided these presentations were as follows. Notice to the Warrington Borough Council. Notice of opportunity to withdraw. Notice to agent is notice to principal, and notice to principal is notice to agent. Do not ignore this letter. Ignoring this letter will have legal consequences.
There's, just before you go on there, there's possibly better verbatim to put there where it says, do not ignore this letter.
I agree. I mean, this is going back, we're going back 7 years in my early days of studies. And you've got all this free man on the land bullshit about notice, and this and that. Notice is jibba jabba. Most of that there is jibba jabba. Okay. So absolutely. I agree with you implicitly.
What I've been using is office found within the universal maximum of law. Notice to principal is notice to agent. Notice to agent is notice to principal. All address parties jointly, severally, as well as their successors, nominees, and assigns. Silence is acquiescence, tact agreement, and dishonour. This is a self-executing contract.
Yeah, but as soon as you use the word notice, a notice is a keep off the grass or an exit. The word notice itself is junk. It's jibber jabber. It's a nonsense word because there's nothing legal and binding about a notice. It's learning the language, and this is very, very early on
But I've also used notice of default, notice of opportunity to cure, because you're noticing them to this is your opportunity, or notice of default, or notice of conditional acceptance. Like, it is jibber jabber in that sense, but it does say, hey, this is what I'm asking you to do.
Yeah.
It's all about the language, isn't it?
It's all about the language. Absolutely,
Mm.
And when you start reading the liens, the very first lien I did, that was a very immature compared to the later liens that I did, which became very mature in their context. Because I changed it up. I upgraded it as I went along.
Okay, dear sirs, we do not know who to name as the recipient of this communication, as the sender failed in her duty of care and did not sign the document sent to Mr. David Ward at his address. The action of not signing the document sent to Mr. David Ward legally means that no living person has taken legal responsibility for the content of the document on behalf of Warrington Borough Council, and the document cannot be legally responded to. The very act of not signing the document renders the document void and therefore non-legal and unusable in law under current legislation. Strike 1, deliberate deception. This document will now be kept on file as physical presentable evidence, as it represents the criminal activities of the representatives of the Warrington Borough Council, whether they are aware of this transgression or not. Ignorance of the law is no defence, and all of the representatives of the Warrington Borough Council are now culpable under current legislation because one individual failed to sign the document. This is a fact which must be understood. Strike 2, ignorance of current legislation. The second big mistake on the document is that the document is a notice to owner. Under current legislation, the owner of any motorised vehicle is the DVLA Swansea SA 99 1BA. This means that some imbecile at the Warrington Borough Council has sent a notice to owner to the registered keeper and not the official owner. Strike 3.
No, I know that's complete bullshit, okay? But that's the standpoint that the government take, that, you know, they own the car. They've got the legal right to take the car. They've got the legal right to crush the car if you don't tax the car. So it's their claim. And I know it's bullshit, but I wrote it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm using their bullshit back against them.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
I've got a letter from a lawyer, which everyone probably needs to know. It says yours faithfully. It's got a signature of Efficient Law Group, and then it has per Katie Withers. Whether you'll be able to see that.
Does that look like an actual signature, or is it a computer graphic? I would say that was an actual signature.
A computer graphic, but I wanted to know what the per meant in front of Katie Withers.
Per.
To come in the per or peer, or there's actually a Latin legalese in Black's 4.
Yeah, okay. I was just going to say, I think it means on behalf of. But, yeah.
Out comes the Black's Law dictionary. This guy's good. He's got it on hand. He's going for it. Because I can't answer that question. I don't know.
I do. Sorry, I'm a nurse, and we use it all the time to write blood slips. It's like we're signing for the doctor.
Right, so you're signing on somebody else's behalf, yeah?
Yeah.
Yep.
Sounds like fraud to me.
Well, to sign something on somebody else's behalf, you've got sort of signed document from whoever it is giving you that authority to sign it on their behalf.
Yeah, but this one's actually signing to a fiction, which is the Efficient Law Group.
Yeah, by the Black's Law, per Latin, it means by, through, or by means of. When a writ of entry is sued out against an alliance of the original intruder or dissentio, or against his heir, to whom the land has descended, it is said to be bought in the per or peer, because the writ then states that the tenant had not entry but by per the original wrongdoer. So when we use the word per in hospital, as we're doing our nursing practice, it actually has a completely different meaning to what we believe it does, as in per someone. It's actually got a Latin legal term behind it, which all these high-ranking 33rd degree Masons know about.
Do you want me to read it?
Yes, please. I do.
Per procuratorium. Sorry, I can't pronounce it, but it's PP Latin, through the manager, by means of procuration or agency. A phrase is often used either in full or abbreviated, where one person signs a receipt or other written document as agent for another. But the phrase is especially applied to the acceptance of a bill of exchange by one person as agent for another.
Which Blacks is that one from there? Yeah.
I can't see myself. It's New Zealand's Barworth's 6th edition Law Dictionary, which is a very
Barworth's. Okay.
A very good book. Very honest.
So can you just summarise that in a couple of words? It just means an agent.
It means when they put these words down, which are Latin in origin, and they hide it in a law dictionary, it means they're deliberately hiding something, but keeping it in plain sight at the same time, which gives them, there's a phrase for it, where they do something in one hand and it's the opposite in the other. It gives them
plausible
deniability, okay? Because people don't even read the dictionary. Your average Joe isn't going to read a law dictionary.
No.
And they're not going to know the Latin, and therefore they've got to look up the Latin. It turns into a minefield. But they give you the revealments because they've written it down in their book, but no one's going to read that book. So therefore they've got the plausible deniability. That's what it is.
Yeah. They put everything in our faces, and if we don't say, hang on, this isn't right, it's silence acquiescence. So
yeah.
So what would be the consequence of her signing on behalf of a fiction?
Well, no one can sign on behalf of the fiction because the fiction itself cannot give someone a permission to sign on their behalf in a written document. The fiction hasn't got hands to write with.
So that's misrepresentation.
Misrepresentation.
Oh, it won't come out.
Yeah.
Fraud and misrepresentation. You're right. Yeah. You know, I got a document, you know, when the wife wanted to get a divorce from her lawyer firm, which is Fiona Bruce LLP. And Carol Nettleton, the lawyer, actually signed in pen Fiona Bruce LLP as a signature on a document. Well, the company can't pick up a pen and sign Fiona Bruce LLP. Therefore, Carol Nettleton, who wrote that signature, has committed fraud, blatant and obvious, and she's a lawyer.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, let's keep going.
Yeah.
Strike 3, the document sent to the wrong address. So that was strike 3. Document sent to the wrong address. We have not progressed beyond the first line, and yet we are falling around on the floor.
I'd take the piss out of these people. I do honest.
We are falling around on the floor in a state of hysteria at the competence levels demonstrated by the representatives of the Warrington Borough Council. Oh. Someone else.
You know, in what is it? That American game with the bats in the ball. What's that called? Baseball. Yes. You know, 3 strikes and you're out. This is why I'm coming up with strike 1, strike 2, strike 3. I'm taking the piss all the time.
That's so funny. Mr. David Ward is the official registered keeper, not the owner. The very next line refers to the Traffic Management Act 2004. Now, this is where things get really interesting, because the act referred to is an act of Her Majesty's Parliament and Governments PLC, a recognised corporation or an all-for-profit business, an act which is not law in the UK. It is not even referred to as law, as it is an act of a corporation or an all-for-profit business or policy, but it is not a law. Strike 4. Displays lack of understanding and competence regarding what is the difference between law and legislation. Acts and statutes of Her Majesty's Parliament and Governments PLC can only be given force of law by the consent of the governed which have agreed to those acts and statutes of HM Parliament and Governments PLC. Therefore, there is a mandatory legal requirement under current legislation that the governed must have given their consent legally, which can be physically presented as a fact before the acts and statutes of Her Majesty's Parliament and Governments PLC can be given force of law. Not law, not enforceable. 63.5 million people in the UK have not legally entered into those agreements in full knowledge and understanding of their own free will, which must be kept on the public record for the acts and statutes of Her Majesty's Parliament and Governments PLC to be given an action which involves force or force of law. The answers to the questions are in the understanding of the words used to implement acts of force or law. The next item we come to is a demand for payment. A demand for payment without a signed bill is a direct contravention of the Bills Exchange Act 1882. Strike 5. The Bills of Exchange Act 1882 is based upon a pre-existing commercial contract or agreement. See Bills of Exchange Act 1882 with a link there. Profiteering through deception is an act of fraud. Strike 6. See the Fraud Act 2006 with another link. Insisting or demanding payment without a pre-existing commercial arrangement, which is based on presentable fact in the form of a commercial agreement, is an act of deception. Payment is a commercial activity. You have been served a legal notice. Is there anything else you want to say about all of that, David, before we go on?
No, that's quite concise. I don't think that needs any further explanation.
I had to bite my tongue all the way through that. I was laughing on the inside. It's so funny.